Hey everybody, Dee Dee the OT here. Today I am going to do a little video on how to increase attention during your school day, which is pretty much at home now for most of us. But if you are in school, this can also help, so it works for both settings. First off, I wanted to introduce some items and then talk about them. These items help with attention. The first one is a TheraBand. You can buy these online. I know Target sells them. They're exercise bands, basically. They come in various strengths. A TheraBand allows for some resistance, or something we call like heavy work, or talking to the joints. So let's say your student or child worked for 20 minutes and then they were given a break. They could do something like pull on the TheraBand. This allows for that joint compression a little bit because it's in a resistance, and it allows for the nervous system to respond through organization. That's one thing. Another way, let's say you were doing it with your upper body, a good way to do it with your lower body. So if you have the kiddo that likes to fidget in their chair a lot and can't sit still and stuff like that, you can tie a TheraBand to the legs of your chairs. So I don't have a chair to visualize this, but imagine the legs. You tie it on nice and tight, and then they're able to stick their feet in through the hole and do resistance with their legs, with their foot like this while they're seated. And that often helps a kiddo stay seated a lot longer and maintain attention a lot longer. So that's two ways to use a TheraBand. Another concept I want to talk about within the idea of movement breaks is this is something called School Moves movement breaks. So I have a little sheet here that goes through a little, we call them brain breaks sequence. So the first one is 10 dots on both hands. So we count to 10, 10 squeezes on both arms, and we count to 10. 10 seconds of hugging yourself super tightly, 10 seconds of pushing the palms together, and then 10 seconds of pulling the hands, or pulling your hands like this for 10 seconds and counting. More gross motor, the ones down here. These activities at the top are to like wake the brain up. So let's say to the student, they're taking a brain break, they've been working for 30 minutes and they're feeling really tired, and these are to wake the brain up. These ones are to calm the body down. So let's say they took a break and now it's time to work and they have to get calm. They would do these top exercises. So the hand presses, the arm presses, the squeezes, the pushes, and the pulls. That allows for that kind of calming. A good thing to integrate during those activities is breath. So like breathing through each one. So we're going to do 10 dots. 1, 2, 3, inhale. 4. So adding in breath during those calming activities are really grounding, and it's a good way to like bring the body back to center. Say, okay, we're going to sit down and work now. Let's say you worked for 30 minutes and you're feeling super tired and you need alerting. You need to wake up a little bit. Those are the exercises that we would do in sequence for more alerting activities. So the first one is Sky to Earth. So you stand up. I'm not going to stand up because I'll get out of frame. You reach up high and then you go down low. You reach up high and you go down low. Then you stand up and you do windmill. So you go down and you have your arms out and you touch your feet. And you're crossing midline to touch your legs one at a time. So you can do it seated. If you have a kiddo that's not standing, that's fine. You can do these seated. The other one is spinning. So spinning in both directions. So let's say they're on an office chair. They can spin 3 times one way, spin 3 times another way. That activates the vestibular system and it gets us more alert. If they're not in a chair and they can stand up, they can spin standing up. Then we do animal crab walks. So I just call these leapfrogs. So just how you would in a regular, frog type of fun time. You would do touch the ground, squat down, and jump up kind of thing. And you do that 10 times. And then the last one, let's say if you're not doing that, like if you can't stand up and jump up like that, you can just push against your chair and lift your bottom up off of the chair. So using your hands, we call that a chair push-up, to push your bottom up off the chair. And then the last one is deep belly breath. So you would have your hand on your heart, hand on your belly, and taking a deep breath, feeling the chest rise, feeling the belly expand, and then exhaling, feeling the belly drop, feeling the chest drop. Now, let's say you need some language around that for breathing. What I do with the little kiddos is I say, let's smell the flowers, and then blow out the candles. Nice. Smell the flowers. They smell so good. Blow out your birthday candles. So that's a good way to get belly breath going. If you need this in a document, I'm happy to send this to you. Just let me know so you have a visual reference. Maybe I can figure out a way to attach it to the video itself. Okay, so that's movement. Another one is this fun deck. It's not super expensive. I think it's like $10 to $15. It's a body awareness deck. And if you're taking a movement break, this is really helpful. You can pull out some cards here. You can say to your student or kiddo, pick a card, any card, and they get to pick one. And let's see. On the back of the card, let's, for example, I don't know what happened here. Here we go. So let's say one of them is this one. They get to do bridge pose or whatever you want to call it. I think in here, she doesn't really give it a name, so you can call it whatever you want. And then here would be like a down dog pose. So the reason these are good for movement breaks too is that if you have a kiddo that is has poor proprioception or knowing where their body is in space, or poor motor imitation, or just struggles in those two areas, this is good practice for the body to visually see something and then to imitate it with your own body. That's a part of the brain that needs to be exercised when you're in school often, because you're doing like physical motor imitation with, playing on the playground, or you are doing motor imitation when you're copying a word from the board, for example. So like if you're copying cat from the board, you see your teacher do a C and then an A and then a T, and you're looking at their body as a student and how they move it to form that letter, and then you're putting it in your brain and then having a motor output, and you have to imitate that same motion. So this also relates to handwriting in a lot of senses. The nice thing about this deck too that I just want to let you know is it has different numbers, different colors of cards. So there's different categories like tabletop position. So let's say you just wanted to keep them seated but do a little movement break, they can stay seated and do those cards. Upper body position. So if you're having a kiddo that mainly uses their upper body or struggles in motor imitation in the upper body more so than the lower body, you would do that one. Then there's upper and lower body positions, and then they have more challenging upper and lower body positions, and then pairs of opposing body positions. So opposition, I can get into that more a little bit later, but an example of opposition is when we run, we run like this, right? Like one side of our body is doing something else from the other, but they are mirroring each other. They're not parallel, they're in opposition. So that's a more advanced mechanism in the brain to develop opposition. We don't get to that right away. We spend our early years in life getting to that. So these cards help with that if you have a kid, though, that's struggling in opposition. And we can talk more about that in subsequent videos. Okay, so we talked about our movement breaks. Now I want to just talk a little bit about fidgets to increase attention. So one good fidget, as some of you know, oh, this is double wrapped, are these little rubber balls. So we have something like a cush ball. I don't know what the general name for it is, but they can play with that. Let's say they're on Zoom or they're getting something read to them and they need to do something with their hands. This is a good one to play with. Another one is a little bit of Play-Doh or a Theraputty. We've talked about that. They can play with this. There's also those squishy stress balls that you can hold and squeeze. That's a good hand strengthener as well. Dual purpose. Another thing is if they're just listening to something and they need to stay seated and they don't need to visually be engaged, you can give them one of these timers and say, okay, we're sitting here to listen to this story or listen to the teacher, and if they need some visual input but won't be and need to sustain engagement, this is a good way for them to get a visual cue that they are engaged, they're staying seated until all this liquid goes down. And let's say if you need more time than just one revolution, you can say, and we have to flip it 10 times. And then you can put a visual on the desk and they can take like the number 1 when it goes off, 2 when it goes off, 3, 4, up until 10, and then their lesson is over. They stayed seated for that whole Zoom session or whatever it is that they have to stay seated for. So this is another great way to get that going. Another one is oral input. So oftentimes when we are seated for a long time and we have a kiddo that needs sustained attention, and you might see this in school as like pencil biting, right? And then you're running out of pens and pencils to give them. Something that we can do is give them a Chewy. Of course, we want an age-appropriate Chewy. So this one is for the younger kiddos, much bigger. There's other reasons why we would use a Chewy like this, but let's just say for just attention purposes, this is one of the Chewies we would be using for a younger kiddo to stay seated during circle time or something like that. If your kiddo's older and you see that the pencil biter or the finger biter or whatever, hands are all in the mouth, we have this dog tag that's more appropriate, and that can be on a like more classy chain versus an actual like necklace. This would be for the younger kiddos. You could do like a necklace and attach the Chewy. The older kiddos, you could do a necklace if you want, if you feel comfortable with that, and have the little Sensa-Chew Army dog tag. You're welcome to email me if you need resources on where to get these, no problem. And then we have a couple other things that I want to talk about. So seating. So seating is really important in maintaining attention. Oftentimes we don't have great posture. I'm kind of slouching here as well. And a good way to get our posture upright is to sit on an awesome Swiss ball. All right, so that's another way to get some seating, to get more upright posture, to increase attention. So now I'm sitting on my Swiss ball. Another thing that you can do rather than just on a Swiss ball is they can do a few bounces while they're on the Swiss ball, and that can help with the attention, that movement. And then lastly, I don't have a visual for this, but I will tell you about it. It's a sit disc. It kind of looks like just something you put underneath you when you're sitting. It's round and it has some bumps on it. I can send you a picture if you're interested in that. And a sit disc has a little bit of air in it. You might have seen it during like exercise discs or something like that people stand on to increase their balance. So it gives kind of like a Swiss ball, but a better option because it's not this big ball that you're sitting on and have to figure out a place to put it in your house or in your classroom. A sit disc allows for that wiggling to happen, a little bit of vestibular input, a little bit of core activation, and then it helps you stay more alert during tabletop activities. So it can increase attention during that kind of activity as well. All right, so I hope these techniques helped. Please reach out with any questions, concerns, anything at all. I'm here. Oh, and another thing is always make sure your feet touch the ground. That's a great way to increase attention too. So if you have a kiddo that's kicking their feet around because their chair is too big and they're not in a good position, ideally it would be 90, 90, 90, which we can talk about more. So the knees would be in 90 degrees flexion, the hips would be in 90 degrees flexion, and their elbows would be in 90 degrees flexion when they're working on at their desk. So that would be the ideal, but at the bare minimum, make sure that your feet are touching the ground, or the kiddo's feet are touching the ground. And if they aren't and their chair is too big and you have no choice but you have to use that chair, a good trick is to get a phone book or a few phone books, stack them up to the right height so that they'll sit underneath their feet, and wrap them up in duct tape and have them be the right height for them so that the knees are flexed in 90 degrees. And the duct tape, when you wrap them up nice and tight in the duct tape, will also kind of act as like a sticky to whatever it is, because whatever it's sitting on, if it's linoleum floor or wood floor, it can get a little bit of traction. Carpet, not so much, but the other kinds of floors that are typically in schools, it does well in it, and it doesn't slide around. All right, I think that's it for today. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I hope this helped. Bye-bye.